Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast to the protection against heavy rain and flooding by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
So the big challenge is, how can house owners like you and me get a flood-free home? How can business managers like you and me get a flood-free company? And how can public servants provide flood-free critical infrastructure and livable cities?
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe. This podcast is for foresighted and proactive people who do not want to shovel the muddy water out of their room while standing in the midst of the disaster.
Therefore, those who design and plan, the architects and engineers, need to construct such buildings and cities, and that even when the entire environment is completely flooded. That is a challenge, and this podcast will give the answers.
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
Yeah, that's a funny title today. A rubber duck shall swim in the bathtub or swimming pool and not in the living room of a nice house. That reminds me all these disaster pictures of the people shoveling, standing in the midst of the house, of the living room, and shoveling the mud out onto the street. And that is, by the way, the same for a business owner standing in the midst of his office and shoveling out the mud out onto the street. Or that is also true for a factory owner, a factory business manager standing in the midst of his factory and looking around, and there's only disaster, and mud. And that is also true for public leaders who are standing perhaps in a public hospital, and the ground floor and the basements are terribly flooded, and there is dirt and mud everywhere. And what is worse in this case is the floods and the mud come with bacteria, and sometimes also with dangerous animals, like that happened in Australia when suddenly snakes and crocodiles were coming with it. And so nobody wants to walk in such water when snakes are also on the way at the same time, and you don't know what else. So that is very risky. And by the way, that is also dangerous, because if you have a small wound, you can get an infection very fast. Sometimes in the news you see children or people swimming in the floods and enjoying it because they make the best out of it. Yeah, understandable. But at the same time, that's a high risk, because this water is definitely not clean, and you shall get a serious infection. So, but I don't want to talk about that. It's about rubber duck, and I mentioned the rubber duck shall swim in the bathtub or swimming pool. Why rubber duck? Sometimes when you know me and you listen to one of these podcasts, or you have read some blog articles, or just watch the webinars or whatever. So even on stage when I do a keynote, I have my rubber duck with me. Why? Because we use our rubber duck to prove that the flood barriers are flood-proof. That means that they do what they shall do, that they work. In our headquarters in the Philippines, I think in Germany they do the same, perhaps without rubber duck. That might be. But in our Asian headquarters, there's a huge mock-up where we test in front of the customers the flood barriers, and then we create a small water basin, because we need water to prove it. It's not enough to have a water hose or fire hose or whatever, and you use it like you do gardening, for instance, to give some water to your flowers or to the grass. in your garden. No, you need a water column, so you need a small swimming pool, not wide but high enough, because the height makes the water pressure. For all those who remember physics in school long ago, it is not how wide the water is, it is how high it is. I explained it several times, and perhaps you remember when you are swimming last time during vacation, or just in a swimming pool somewhere, and then you were diving. Yeah, I do that. I really like that, to dive. Since I was a small child, I liked diving. But after a certain depth, then suddenly you feel the pain in your ears, and that is a water pressure. And then now imagine you are at the seaside. You are swimming at the sea somewhere in the world without alligators and sharks and snakes, hopefully. And then you dive the same way, like what you did in the swimming pool. You will have the same feeling. You will feel the same pain in your ears after a certain depth. And that's the thing. The water pressure depends on the water column, on the height of the water. If not, the water pressure should be extremely high when you swim in the ocean, because you can look to the horizon. If that plays a role, you would die immediately when you get into the water, but you don't, right? So I hope next time when people are telling you, and very often even in my business, I meet people who want to tell me that it depends how wide the water is. I'm always astonished. And anyway, you must not be an engineer to understand that. Common sense is good enough. So way back to our rubber duck, I mentioned we use it because at the end of the testing, when we have filled our water basin around the barrier, so we simulate the flooding situation. And then we put the rubber duck on top to make it swim and to prove that there is real water inside and that is not a fake, especially on video. There are so many fake videos and fake images. So we do that in front of the customers. So, and if you ever want to visit us, give us a phone call and tell us that you are interested to join, and then you are welcome to come to Clark. I always mention that Clark has an international airport very close to the company, and so it's easy to go there. So, okay, but way back to rubber duck. Why it should swim in the bathtub or swimming pool? Because you don't want to have it in your living room. Very easy. Once the rubber duck is swimming in your living room, you have the whole disaster, and that is definitely what you don't want. So I hope that you think about a good protection, that you think about the right barriers you might use for the protection of your private home, of your public facilities, and also for these business units, whatever it is, whether it is an office, a warehouse, or a factory. So don't let the rubber duck swim in the bathtub or swimming pool. I wish and hope for you that you make the right decisions when it comes to your personal flood protection. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast channel if you haven't already. Now it only remains for me to wish you a good day. Do something with it. Maybe until the next podcast episode. I would be very happy. See you then. As always, stay safe and flood free. Your Andreas Klippe and the whole Flood Experts team.
That's it again with the new episode of Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe, German engineer, book author, and head of the Flood Experts. What can Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe protect for you? anytime, worldwide? Contact us or just click through to www.thefloodexperts.de/bonus. Detailed engineering, German quality, safe. Flood protection secrets. The secrets you'll want to unfold.
Don't forget, you're only one flood barrier away.
Subscribe to the season, and you'll never be late for an episode.